Welcome back to The Basics Basic. The observant among you may recognize that the bookshelf is looking different. This is not going to be the final setup. I was lucky enough to get some of the cloth-bound Penguin classics. They were majorly on sale and I could not help myself. But I need to put these in my shelf, and right now it is just a little bit chaotic. We have classics, we have Kristen Hanna, we have memoirs. I'm gonna go through and fix it up once the last 4 of these cloth-bound classics have arrived. But for right now, it's a little bit of a mess, and we're just gonna have you go with it. Okay, the first book I read this week was Emma of 83rd Street, and this is a retelling of Emma by Jane Austen. And I do know that the adaptation for the classic and adaptation could be a movie or something else, but this has been a book I've been interested in reading for a while, so I figured I read a lot of books, might as well read another. Basically, Emma is a New York socialite. She has neighbors of the Knightley brothers, who are these charming rich men, and her sister married one of the brothers, so she's just good friends with them. She is going to grad school to become an art curator, I believe, and she wants to get a job at the Met. And so the whole premise of the book is that she's in class, she sees this girl named Nadine, and she says, "I can fix you, you are going to be my next project." And so she kind of helps Nadine come up in the world. She gives her a haircut. Nadine is from Iowa, I think, and basically Emma New Yorkifies Nadine. And so the story is basically her and Nadine. Knightley, the neighbor next door, is kind of involved in it and has his opinions, and it's basically the same plot as Emma because it's an adaptation. Emma's pretty content with her life as it is at the start of the novel, and then the rest of the book is her kind of coming to terms with what the world is and what her role in the world should be and what she wants it to be. The question that this book, I think, asks is what Jane Austen's characters would look like in the modern world, and do the stories apply in a modern setting, which I personally think they do. I'm a huge Jane Austen stan, but read the book, tell me what you think. Then it also asks about how does timing and proximity affect affection and our interest in people and attraction and things like that. Lastly, the question that this book seeks to address is when are our best intentions faulty and actually just meddling and meddlesome as opposed to being helpful and good. And so it's a decent book. I rated it 3 stars. I didn't like it nearly as much as I liked Emma, the original, and it was a lot spicier than it needed to be, in my opinion. I'm not much of a spicy reader. That's just my personal preference. The writing was fine. The adaptation was fine. I wasn't blown away by it. It didn't feel like an upgrade from the original. It just felt like, yeah, that's the same story, but in New York City. But I did put it on the board. Obviously, it is the adaptation for the classics and adaptation. And then I also put this in the alphabet challenge, and I put it for E for Emma. So we officially have 2 more spots knocked off the board. Next, I read the memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Now, this is a memoir I've heard a lot about. It's what I've been interested in. I've been getting into memoirs, specifically celebrity memoirs, more recently. I read Britney Spears' memoir and Viola Davis's memoir earlier this year, so this is my 3rd celebrity memoir of the year, and I've had high expectations for it. If you don't know, Jeanette McCurdy was on iCarly. She was Sam, and this is basically her story of how she became a child actor and a child star in Hollywood. And it's really honest and it's heartbreaking, and it's a coming of age story. And something I loved about this book is that when she is writing about being 6, she does so only with the knowledge she had at 6 years old. And then as each chapter progresses in her life, she only has the knowledge in how she writes it to that point in her life. So it's not written retrospectively necessarily, it's written as if it was in real time. And so her concept of self and reality develops as an author as you get farther into the book, which I think is a really interesting take on a memoir, because usually the ones I've read, at least, it's looking back and it's saying oh, this is what happened, whereas this one is this is what's happening as we go. This book asks a lot of really important questions, I think. The first one being, what do we owe family when love and control are intertwined? And how do we separate our own identity from the expectations that are placed on us by family or even others around us? I think it asks, can humor and honesty coexist with trauma? And can it help you heal, or is it just a coping method that's pushing aside healing and not actually doing anything with it? And also, what does recovery look like when your childhood was never really yours to begin with? And how do you come to terms with your autonomy when you weren't allowed to have it early on? So it's a really powerful book. It asks a lot of really important questions. I think it's a really interesting look at really toxic parenting that's disguised as I love you and this is what love looks like. I think I've said this before, I do not rate memoirs. I don't think it's fair to rate someone's life story. And I could rate it just based on the writing, but it just feels icky to me. I don't want to rate a memoir, so I don't. I do recommend reading it if that's what you're looking for. I think it's worth reading. I think it's a story worth thinking through and a perspective that's interesting to look at. So I recommend it as a book, but I'm not going to give it a star rating for this. I did, however, still put it on the board. The first spot I put it in is nonfiction. And then the second spot I put it is the Rainbow Challenge, and I put it here for the color yellow. Those are the spots we put it in. This is what the board looks like now with those two spots updated. We're now gonna go a little bit back in time to the Depression era to read The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. This is about an English woman who marries an American man and moves her entire life from the United Kingdom to Kentucky to escape her unhealthy family dynamic in England. However, when she arrives in Kentucky and as she experiences married life, she realizes she has a very dysfunctional marriage with a really unhealthy family dynamic in place. And so she's looking for any way to connect to anyone. She's a strange woman in a strange land. She ends up becoming part of Eleanor Roosevelt's Packhorse Library Initiative. So basically there were women who would go out to different towns and deliver books to people who didn't have any access to books or stories. And so these women would get on their mules or their pack horses or whatever, and they would literally traverse into the mountains to deliver books to rural families and neighborhoods. And this book is beautiful. I really loved it. It talks so much about sisterhood, resilience, and the power of women, and the power of books and story and literacy. And it was phenomenal. I wish I could read this again for the first time. I did not want it to end. I was very moved by it. I was impacted by it. I thought it was really powerful, to be honest. And I had actually started this book in 2020 during COVID, read maybe 20 pages and put it down, and then had to return it to the library. So I was not looking forward to reading this because I knew I had DNF'd it like 5 years ago, and I was so delightfully surprised by how much I enjoyed this. I rated this 5 stars. I loved this book. Also asks really important questions. The first of which being, how do stories and access of knowledge change our lives? It talks about what does courage look like in the face of societal expectations and oppression. And it asks what freedom is worth when it comes at a personal cost. And then maybe most importantly, it touches on how do women find strength from others or within themselves when the world is trying to silence them. And if that's not going to make you read a book by listening to those questions, I don't know what will. But I loved this book. I would recommend it to pretty much anyone. I put it in 2 spots on the board. As per always, I say that as if that's supposed to be a surprise. But I did put it on 2 spots. The first was in the animals category. They are riding horses left and right all over the place. And so obviously we put this in the farm animals for the horses. And then second, I put this in the blurbed book category. This was a author who had commented on the original Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow book, and so it was the 3rd book I've read. I want to say I picked an excellent original book for this because all 3 books I've read for this category so far have been 4.5 stars and above. So this pick was like maybe the best pick I've made in the entire series. And we'll have to see if the 4th book I read for this category continues to fall in the like some of the best books I've read for this challenge pattern that we have going on here. This is what the board looks like now with those 2 spots updated. I only have 1 more spot left for the blurbed book. I'm excited to read that. I think I know what I'm gonna read, but we'll have to see when I can get it from the library, so we might have to wait a little bit to get the 4th book for that, and I'm really hoping it doesn't disappoint because the expectations are high. So those were the 3 books I read this week. My favorite book of the week, probably not by anyone's surprise, is The Giver of Stars. I love this book, and then I actually put this as my second favorite book that I've read this whole series. So we have My Friends First by Friedrich Bachmann, and then right beneath it, The Giver of Stars. I'm wondering if over time this book will actually like live in my brain above My Friends, because I know sometimes I'll like things more and more the longer I go, and the more I think about something, the more I realize like, wow, this had a bigger impact on me than I thought. So I'm curious if like at the end of the series, if I'll do a like readjust the board to see if things have like really sat with me a long time, and maybe I'll rank them a little bit higher or a little bit lower than I did immediately after. Because sometimes I think the novelty of the book makes me rank it really high, and then after I've read others, I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. I don't know if it's still a 5-star. I don't know if it's still my absolute top book I read, but currently everything's standing where it is, and I'm happy with it. So that is where we're at. And then last week I spun the mood read, and this was a success. I did read Emma of 83rd Street for my mood read. This is honestly the best spot on the wheel to get, because it means I can read anything. I'm actually not spinning the wheel for next week because I have a bunch of weddings this week, and so I'm just gonna let myself mood read, and then we'll pick up a spin for the following week after that. I'm hoping to still be reading. I'm not too stressed about getting things read. I just know I can't like force myself to read things, so I'm worried about getting in a slump. So I'm gonna just let myself pick whatever I want to this coming week, and then we'll spin the wheel next week. But for now, we have read 21 books in this challenge. We are on the 9th week of this challenge out of 52. At this point, we just gotta keep reading, keep resting, and I will see you soon.